as you can see, I'm making this vlog right after I talk about Elemental. And like I said in my Elemental vlog, is that I watched this movie at the same time, both at the same time in a double feature. Uh, but I decided, to reverse the order of which movie I saw first and which one I saw second and which one I was gonna talk first because, like I said, I was more passionate a little bit to talk about Elemental that I wanted to let it out of my system. But in the case of the other movie that I saw, which is The Blackening, oh boy, I had to give myself a little bit of thoughts about how I want to talk about this movie because, man, I had high expectations about this movie. Really, really high expectations because I saw the trailer and yeah, it was gonna be one of those that's gonna say that it's gonna have an all black cast for a horror comedy, and I and I found that I thought that the commercial was mesmerizing. I thought this was gonna be one of those that is gonna be wild with an interesting plot, and I mean you should see the face of that board game because it involves a board game, and just to look at that face, you can tell that they just wanted to go. That they wanted to go kind of like in the offensive level, and personally, I know that when you make offensive stereotyping or in either a horror movie or a drama movie or any kind of movie, it always comes off as kind of like a double-edged sword because you're gonna offend people. But at the same time, for me, this is kind of comes off like interesting because you just kind of want to know you just want to kind of know the origin of those sentiments. It's almost like how I do feel like the obvious the bane of Disney movies, Song of the South. They call it kind of like racially offensive, but and you get why, but at the same time there is an interesting aspect about wanting to know why these sentiments happen, and so in a way, this is what I was expecting for The Blackening, and I was really really anticipating out of it. But before I talk to you about the movie, I do want to tell you that I had a little bit of a kind of like a lousy audience experience in it because I had the bad luck that the people that sat next to me, there were some teenagers, and during the whole time, it's one of those annoying teenagers that they just giggle during the whole movie because they don't care about the movie. They just want to be under social media, on their smartphone. They talk to each other. They were kind of loud, and that was distracting for a movie theater that wasn't exactly very packed. So I even had to go once telling them, "You guys are interrupting the movie." But still, these kids, they didn't get it. They didn't get it, and then while they behave eventually, they still kind of like giggle and talk during the movie. They still didn't. They still didn't respect me as an audience, knowing that I am here. Please don't do that. But at the same time, I was a little bit more interested on these guys because at the end of the day, The Blackening, personally, it sucked. I didn't like this. I didn't like this movie. That The Blackening, what is this year's disappointment? And I don't know if it's me, because I am surprised that there are people giving this movie a positive review. And I was like, really? This movie? Is the movie either bad for real, or is it just me? And don't come up with excuse by saying that maybe this movie isn't for me. Maybe it is for maybe it's a black comedy and you're not black. Look, I don't want to play that card, but I want to know. There are some other reasons why this movie disappointed me, and the more while I was thinking about it, I think the biggest reason why this movie disappointed me is because I had high expectations for this movie. I thought that it was gonna be something that I was expecting, but it didn't. I didn't find the comedy very funny. And don't get me wrong. Again, I can't get used to these kind of comedies. I like Scary Movie, for example. So I thought that it was gonna be kind of like really offensive. That it's gonna be kind of like shocking, laughable, or in this case of the horror aspect. They didn't even take advantage of that. So when the movie ended, I was really disappointed. Really, really disappointed. I'm sorry to all these people who are giving it a positive review of the Blackening, but I am not that kind of guy. This is gonna be one of those that I'm not a fan of this one. So the movie is about this group of people, all black people. They're gonna have this friend reunion at a cabin in the Juneteenth, which is technically a holiday. I'm not gonna go exactly into details. So they get trapped. So apparently then they find this board game called the Blackening, which is basically, it looks like it looks like kind of like Jumanji with a stereotype, with an offensive stereotype, like blackface in the middle of it, and but it plays like Trivial Pursuit, that they have to answer some trivia questions, in which the biggest marketing that the movie has is that you're gonna see who is the blackest, or something like that. Little that they know is that everything is they get mixed up in this revenge plot from a mysterious guy that wants these people dead. And of course, there's some masked dude who is trying to kill them. That's the basic gist that I have to say. And from the moment that I saw the trailer that it's gonna be about this killer board game, and it's gonna haunt these people, I was invested into it because I was expecting something kind of like a haunted Jumanji, and I was expecting that. But man, I should have known better, especially when I saw the opening. Because the opening, they show us that this movie is directed by none other than Tim Story. Tim Story, the guy who gave us the awful Tom and Jerry movie. I should have known better. I don't check out IMDb before I watch the movie, so I should have known better that this is gonna be a Tim Story movie. But okay, I still like his what was it, Fantastic Four movie. It's kind of like a pass that I give out, but nope. This time, you disappoint me in this one. And it's funny because the trailer, no, not the trailer. The opening of the movie, it kind of showcased some promise. Although I did kind of give out a little bit of a chuckle when the movie opens with based on true stories, well, not in which it hasn't, something like that. It's kind of like wanted to play out like this joke and saying that okay, this is based on a true story. Not really, something like that. And they wanted to emphasize that this movie is gonna emphasize that it's all black when the title screen of the Blackening has the part black really big. Big. So we get introduced to all these characters, in which basically they're, I wouldn't say exactly characters, but more like stereotypes. These are kind of like the more kind of like those two-dimensional stereotypes of the kind of black people you're gonna see in these kind of horror movies. Although personally, I I found their personalities kind of forgettable. They're not they kind of talk about their background and their personality, but we don't get we don't get technically kind of like a flashback or a background to emphasize the imagery of the story. We just have to, pay attention to what they talk, and they come up, with the insults. And I warned you, this movie does have the N word, and that I should not talk about it, but I did count it. They tell the N word like 17 times. But that's the least of the problem. The characters, again, they're just basically stereotypes. They're kind of like the guy that comes from a gangster family, another one who is kind of like a mixed race. There is the fat, loud woman. Most of them, I technically forget their personalities. There's a strong guy. I try to remember all of them, but I think that the one that I remember the most is the nerdy guy, the guy with the glasses, and he has kind of like this speech impediment or something. Like, what, I kind of forget how he talks, but he talks really funny. That guy. I think I will remember most because he was really nerdy. He's so nerdy that he puts Urkel to shame. And by the way, all these actors, at least I give them credit. No one underacts or is a terrible actor. They played the part and they did decently. What else I can talk about? It's mostly the chemistry of the character that I didn't get into it, because you say that they're kind of like friends, that they reunite from after 10 years, and honestly, the way they talk, I kind of didn't believe it. I just have to take their word from it, and none of them comes out a little bit kind of like laugh out loud funny. But mostly because I kind of expected their personality to, go wild or something like that. Like, take for example, in Scary Movie, we have kind of like Shorty. I always remember Shorty because he had kind of this larger than life personality despite being a stoner. But these guys, not much. Also, the style of humor is pretty hit or miss. There's some moments that I did chuckle for a moment, but most of the jokes, it just keep rambling, and you can tell also some of the disadvantages of the improv humor that they try, because most of the humor is mostly improv. And this weekend I saw a movie that it had also improv humor, and I can see some of the hit or misses that this kind of style they do that, because sometimes the humor can work and the humor doesn't, and this one it didn't work for me. It didn't work. So and of course, we got the killer who had this kind of like this gimpy mask that it wanted to play kind of like a Jason Voorhees kind of character, of course, instead of machete, it has a crossbow. Going a little bit more into detail about the humor, I think this is the biggest thing that this movie is trying to do. Because honestly, the biggest the movie that they wanted to be marketed and kind of want to play as a joke is that they are it's kind of reliant on the trope that the you know that every time they say in horror movies that the black person is the first one to die, and so now they can't do that because, well, now everyone is black. So who's the blackest? And the blackest is gonna it should be the first one to die. This is one of the biggest things that this movie has. But I don't know why they keep insisting on doing that, because I've been seeing a lot more of those horror, modern horror movies, and the trope of that the black person is the first one to die. There is now being so aware that recent horror movies are actually trying to avoid that. They are trying to avoid killing the black person for last. Come to think of it, now they're technically avoiding, sometimes avoiding it to the point that the black person is basically is the one that's gonna survive the whole movie, to the point that it kind of turns into the hero. So I don't know. I think that this stereotyping in modern horror movies it now got a little bit old. I think that it makes in some occasions horror movies are becoming a little bit more cautious to try to not be offensive. And and this is also, and like I said, this is another thing why this movie disappointed me, is that I didn't find this movie very offensive. I wanted it to be offensive. I wanted to, open my mouth. There are some moments that you might find that it's kind of like tasteless or colorful, but it wasn't. It wasn't exactly as tasteless as possible. Sometimes, yeah, you might get offended, because they say the N word a few times, and well, the plot itself is about, black people, talking about black stuff, and sometimes they even talk of saying that, oh, the white people are like that here and there and all that. That I'm not gonna go exactly into details, but again, because of the improvisation, it didn't go exactly as far as possible. And the other thing that really, really disappointed me on the movie is the board game itself, because like I already said, I had expectations that the movie was gonna be kind of like Jumanji, that you see this board game, and when things happen, magical things happen. I wanted to talk about, to make it kind of like a horror fantasy in this one. I'm adding some fantasy elements that could have helped me improve my interest in the movie, but it didn't do that. The board game is just basically kind of like a prop, and it gets used as to play this kind of like trivia game in which they have to answer a few black culture trivia questions, and of course one of them is kind of like saying that you have to get rid of the blackest of all of you, or something like that. And I expect, and I wanted this movie to have some kind of paranormal plot into it, but it doesn't. It really disappointed me that it's mostly a revenge plot. I'm not gonna go exactly into details, because probably people are gonna be probably people are gonna get interested about it, and I don't want to be kind of like just spoiled for it in this one. But honestly, I will say that I did see there was a point in which I didn't know where the movie was gonna go for, but then it kind of leaves out the clues, saying that okay, and I think I might know where this is going, until, of course, in the end, it was like, yep, I kind of knew it was gonna go there. But again, it's probably because of my knowledge about movie logics when it comes like that. But again, I wouldn't be so disappointed if it wasn't for if the movie wasn't like my I shouldn't have my expectations really high. I thought that it was gonna have uh, this paranormal wacky stuff. I wanted it to be as wacky as Scary Movie, but it wasn't like that. And some of the characters were on. I didn't technically kind of like the character. It was just kind of like, they're not my they're not my kind of people. And I think I already talked about much about this movie. Oh yeah, I think this movie is technically drag on. It's kind of like 2 hour 30 minutes long. How much of this movie is? Hour 36 minutes. No way. No way. I did felt it longer. I did felt longer. Oh yeah, and continuing about the board game. This is what also disappointed me, is that for a movie called The Blackening, in which it's supposed to have the board game was gonna be kind of like center of it. Later, it was technically after the halfway through the movie that they just drop it. They just drop that board game, and it suddenly turns into a slasher film. That is what disappointed me. It disappointed me that the board game it becomes irrelevant to the whole film, although its element comes back during the climax, but the damage is still done, and the board game it becomes irrelevant, and it's just people just making improv and talking about the stereotyping and all that. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, another thing that made this movie disappointing is that it plays out a little bit too safe with the characters. Probably you don't know what I mean when I said that it plays out too safe. It's not. It's not gory. It has some piercing of arrows, but you can tell that they wanted to make a comedy first and not a horror movie. So as a horror movie, it fails, but as a comedy, it will depend on if you're kind of like in the mood of seeing people just rambling improvs, making fun of trying to make fun of the genre that the black character is the one that dies first, but in this movie they don't. They even kind of name a movie in which the black character doesn't die. If you ask me, I will answer, well, there's Ice Cube from Anaconda, if you can count Anaconda as a horror movie. But so the movie went on, and I was just there, just trying to find myself a moment if I could laugh for a moment or two, but I couldn't. Also, it didn't help that I have these annoying teenagers next to me that distracted me during the whole movie. But at the end of the day, it was just a movie, and I was just disappointed me. It sucked. At least personally, it sucked. The Blackening The Blackening didn't do better. It didn't do well for me. I had more enjoyment watching Elemental, so honestly for me it is a hard recommendation, and I still question myself if if I am to blame. If I'm to blame that maybe this movie wasn't made for me, maybe I'm not the correct audience for this one that it had. But at the same time, that shouldn't be an excuse. Movies movies should feel like you're welcome, no matter what target audience you are. Like when you make animation, most people have the stereotyping that they want to make animation for children, but it's not true. Animation is welcoming for even adults. So if you have to welcome people from different ages, why not also from different races, and and make you also kind of like learn things. Like for example, I would like to learn from like different cultures and from different races. And like I said many times, I never like to talked about races and all that. I don't even like saying black people, white people, yellow people, or something like that, because I try to be as polite as possible. It's rude to pinpoint that unless it's kind of like necessary. So, but this movie kind of begged for it because, well, it's technically the point that it does. So it is a hard recommendation that I will give it to the Blackening. If you are kind of like ready for this, and if you seen the trailer and you expect that it's gonna be about a killer board game, I will say don't get your hopes up. It's not that, but still, the movie leaves out with the biggest question: who's the blackest?